The Gauteng Department of Community Safety is hosting an engagement with male victims of gender-based violence. This is part of building awareness around GBV leading up to 16 Days of Activism campaign, which starts later this month. Our reporter Tshegohaco Moagi is there. Tshegohaco, very good morning. What can we expect? I suppose it's a departure having male victims rather, of GBV, all too accustomed to women being the victims.
Absolutely. Good morning, Hugo. And you're correct. We are so accustomed to having the women victims rather, being the ones that come forward to speak about the violence that they face. But this particular conference that is held by the Gauteng Community Safety really highlighting the fact that even men are gender-based violence victims, and we are expecting them to speak out. You know, some men have already spoken out about their experiences, but they're also activists, people that are just against gender-based violence altogether, that we are expecting at this conference today. But to give us more details about why they're doing this and what more we can expect today. I mean, this conference started, it's a 3-day conference. It started on Friday. But to give us more details of what we can expect today specifically, Hugo, I'm joined by the Gauteng Community Safety Head of Department, that is Ms. Nontsikelelo Sisulu. Thank you so much for your time, HOD. Let's start off with the issue of male gender-based violence. This is something that we don't often hear, and a conference like this is very important for victims and survivors to be able to speak.
Absolutely. So thank you very much for the opportunity. It's important to note that this is in no way underscoring the high levels of gender-based violence and femicide against women, but recognizing that we're a society of men, women, girls and boys, a society in which we fought for gender equality, not at the exclusion of men, but at the inclusion of women. It is very, very important that we recognize that gender in itself is a social construct that's led men and women to believe they need to behave in a particular way and be in a particular way in society. And so when men get abused, less of them speak out, and the experience of secondary victimization, and we do fortunately have the South African Police Service here, 2 colonels, one from the FCS and the other from the investigation unit. We also have the Department of Justice here, so that we have a more comprehensive look at the work that we have to do to ensure that men are supported as best they can, so that even when they feel like they're going to be humiliated, emasculated, when they go into public spaces, that they are actually supported in one way or the other, whether it's through our Victim Empowerment Center, whether it's through the victim-friendly rooms at the SAPS. We want to ensure that they are encouraged to report, so that once they heal and they are better, they can become better members of society and become advocates for gender-based violence against men and women as a whole, for a much better and safer South Africa and Gauteng in particular.
Now, this, of course, is a conference heading into 16 days of activism against the abuse of women and children. But would you, as Gauteng Community Safety, say that we need to then include the men also, the men survivors of gender-based violence?
We have to include the boy child, the young men, and the men. The whole spectrum, the whole lifespan, including older men, so that the imparting and sharing of knowledge, the mentoring that happens, including the conversations that happen at taverns, which we know some of that alcohol drinking and drug abuse are one of the root causes. And I was very happy now to listen to one of the men who was saying that himself, to say, we've been here for 3 days, but I think we ourselves as men missed the boy child. But our presence in the home is also not that visible, so we need to be there. And there was another voice, and another voice had indicated that it's important that we know why we get married, you know, and why we have women, and they are there to bear children. And another was able to counter that, and that's the conversations we want amongst men. The one who says, no, we married, they come with rights, and the one said they've always had rights. It's not that they come with rights now, post-1994, but it's how we interact and present ourselves as men in society, in our families and in our communities, that will actually make a difference, because they have committed themselves to become part of the change that they want in their country.
I'm so glad you mentioned the issue of the boy child. It's often that the boy child is forgotten about or not communicated about when it comes to the issues of violence, not just violence against them, but also violence against the violence that they could possibly perpetrate towards women. And the conversations, of course, that need to be had with the boy child, isn't it, HOD, is around the issues of how they should be reporting any violence against them as well from a very young age.
Absolutely, absolutely. Remember, we're all human beings, and we come from that basis. The fact that we then get stereotyped, and of course in that process we leave out the LGBTQIA plus sector, who then get victimized as they grow, from when they're at school all the way up until they're adults. And of course we also have quite a number of cases of the sector of the LGBTQIA plus sector who are actually being victimized, in part because as we rear our children, and there is no one formula that will fit all our children, we need to take into account the fact that the boy child must equally speak out, whether it's violence against them or at school, whether they're being bullied, whether they're being coerced into using or selling drugs. It doesn't matter in what aspect and what kind of social pressures they're getting. The home and a teacher, a community member, a grandmother, a grandfather, malume, an aunt, uncle, somebody in the family of this child needs to be accessible. And I'm a boy's mom, and my son said to me, I just saw him for a few hours on Friday, and I did say I was coming back to work. He said, "Mom, I'll see you whenever." And that has stayed with me, and he's 15. It's not that one is not there, it's just that one needs to have that work, that life, that balance to ensure that you're actually there for your children, you know, and not just presently there, but they need to know and be able to interact with you so they can speak to you about the issues that bother them the most and the issues that make them happy. I did let him drive, so he was very happy afterwards. So I'm trying to compensate.
Thank you so much, HOD Nontsikelelo Sisulu, really giving us an idea of what this conference is all about. And of course, the conversations need to start from the home. And as she said, you know, you need to somehow have an incentive for your children as well when they do speak to you about certain things that are not pleasing for them, specifically most times at school, so that when they grow up as well, Hugo, you heard there from the HOD mentioning that as they grow up, they are able then to just be better people, but also be able to speak out should they encounter violence in their lives. Hugo?
So, thank you so much for that. We will be crossing back to you as the morning progresses to get an update on what's come out of that workshop this morning.